Jules, hit it. The ST's Alpha series is a family of model rockets that represents the baseline, the entry level, the rocket for beginners. Well, if Samsung has its way, Alpha isn't going to mean the same thing in the smartphone world. We'll talk about that. Plus, the Moto X Plus One gets detailed in a juicy new series of photos that's got some antennas extended. And Motorola wants you to unlock your next smartphone with a tattoo. Those stories, plus a hands-on with the new Fire Phone, your listener mail, and much, much more on episode 106 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week podcast where we discuss news and share mostly qualified opinions from the world of mobile technology. Smartphones, tablets, wearables, and other gadgets you wished existed when you were a kid.
Now with more music than ever before.
It's almost like we've been here before. It's like we're reliving a particular stretch of time once over. It's all right. I'll re-record the intro and it'll be fine. I can hear myself, but I don't know if you guys are hearing the myself that I am hearing. Does that make sense?
Like if there's a pod person, Michael, who's somewhere getting in the pipes between you and us.
Yeah, exactly. Now, this is funny because I've muted Jules, but I am still hearing all of that.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not.
You're not. That's interesting. Well, anyway, this is a very peculiar start to episode 106 of the Pocketnow Weekly. As I understand it, neither of you can hear anything amiss right now.
No, sounds fine.
What I am hearing is everything I said 20 seconds ago. So this is very, very, very peculiar. It's not just me. I'm not a crazy person. I'm going to take these out. I can't hear you while I'm saying it. Well, let me introduce you guys to everyone who is here, and maybe when I put these back in, things will be good. From Boston, Massachusetts, where they still let you talk on the phone when driving, by the way. It's fun. I'm your host, Michael Fisher. I'm joined by Pocketnow's chief news editor, Stephen Schenck from New Jersey, better known as Jersey 2, the sequel. It's good to see you, sir.
We don't get to do anything good here in Jersey. We can't use the phones without the hands-free.
Martin.
Okay,
from a place spelled. I'm sorry to cut you off. I can't hear anything for F's sake.
Do you have a window open in the background?
I beg your pardon?
Do you have this Hangout open in the background somewhere in a tab?
Taylor, it's important to me that you don't make me look stupid on the air, but you nonetheless. I appreciate your contribution just then because it has made my life immeasurably easier. Can we never speak of this again?
Sure.
Jules, in my head I was blaming you that whole time, but I'm an idiot, so I'm glad I didn't do it out loud. Anyway, hey, what were you saying about New Jersey, Stephen?
We can't do anything good with our cars here. We can't pump our own gas. We can't talk on phones. I'm going to have to head up north and just kick it loose with y'all.
I wish you would, because I liked hanging out with you the one time we did it. Also joined, we're joined by senior editor Taylor Martin today from a place spelled Rural Hall, but obviously not pronounced that way because, of course, it's in Kakalaki. Welcome back to you, sir.
It's Rural Hall.
Rural Hall.
Rural Hall.
Man, what a dumpster fire that intro was. So I'm sorry. Let me explain. We have Jules Wang, who is a fantastic video editor and our fantastic podcast board op, who I'm now going to unmute, who I will lock the camera on, who said this is fun on his notepad file there, and God, it sure was. Well, listen, he's running sound for us today. Everyone welcome Jules Wang, known as Greenpoint0 on Twitter, and I had the podcast window open in the background of my computer. So I was hearing everything on a 20-second delay, and it just wasn't stopping no matter what it did. So I'm sorry, everyone, for that bumpy lead-in. But now that we have our pants on and zipped up and everything, it's time that we got this bit of business out of the way right up top. We have to let you know that today's episode of the Pocketnow Weekly is brought to you by Swappa.com, a marketplace for gently used smartphones, tablets, and wearables. From the iPhone 5S to the OnePlus One to the Nexus 5 that I bought a few weeks ago. The What's Hot section at Swappa is teeming with mobile devices in good condition at great prices. If your current smartphone, tablet, or smartwatch is getting a little long in the tooth, you can sell it on Swappa too with no seller fees. And if it's accessories you're looking for, Swappa's got you covered there too with the all-new Boneyard. So visit swappa.com/pocketnow so they know we sent you. Steven, we have some announcements to get through today, don't we?
We do. Our summer of smartphone giveaways continues this week with the second round of OnePlus One invite giveaways. We gave away one of those last week, opened things up again this week. And I know it's a little bit of a less exciting prize because OnePlus recently announced they were giving away, I think, 5,000 or some of their own. But we still appreciate those of you who took the time to enter our contest. So with no further ado...
Indeed.
The winner of...
Ooh, yeah. Let me get Jules to fire up a...
Cue up the sounds, yeah.
The drum roll, yeah. Can we do that
It's the most
live?
important part about this.
It is very important. Like it's what makes the giveaway announcement so very thrilling.
Amen.
That was the Palm Pre announcement tone, which, you know, I liked. All right, sure. Steven, who won the thing?
This could set like a nice feeling for the rest of the podcast, doing just the wrong sound effects at all times, like cue up the drum roll, and we hear like ducks quacking.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think that's important.
Our winner of the second OnePlus One 64GB invite is Tyler Martin. Not Taylor Martin, mind you. Sorry to burst your bubble there. Tyler, congratulations. We will be in touch shortly via email to get to you your code so you can get your order in. And everyone who didn't win, check back next week. On Monday, we will have the announcement of our next giveaway. And this coming week's prize should be a little more exciting. I've probably already announced what it is, but I'm not going to now, again, so you have to come back on Monday and find out for yourself. So.
You're not, you have to come, like the podcast is, we announce the winners on the podcast to get more people to listen to the podcast, but in order to know what next week's thing is, you have to read the news post. This is an interesting strategy.
Man. It's never ending. We have to always interact.
You have to always, right, you always have to be chasing your tail around in a circle.
It's just one big connect the dots.
Well, speaking of the podcast, we want to let everyone know that our Gadgets in Hand segment later on today will focus on the Amazon Fire Phone, the HTC One E8, and the Martian Notifier. We have all three of these in hand and ready to share details with you on. So if you have Q&A questions, if you have questions about these devices, use the Q&A functionality in the Hangouts if you're watching this live right now. And if you're listening to it later on, you'll get to hear everyone else's Q&A and maybe your listener mail when we get to it in a bit. But those aren't the only devices that we're focusing on today. Taylor Martin was trying to talk a second ago, and I wonder if he was trying to tell me about his G3 unboxing. Were you, Taylor?
No, I actually wasn't. I was
Great,
going to say...
great.
Why the hell not?
We've got a good flow going already.
Yeah.
What were you trying to say?
This is what I do. This is why you have me on, so I can disrupt the flow of
Exactly
things.
right. It's exactly right.
No, I was going to correct you because you said we had them on hand. I haven't touched any of those devices, so...
Yeah, you're gonna be silent
Seriously.
T for Gadgets in Hand.
Yeah.
Well, tell us then. This is why I put this here, Taylor. You've unboxed the LG G3 for AT&T. It's the first American review unit of the G3 we've got. Sum it up in a minute or less for us. How are you enjoying it so far? I'll lock the camera on you so you can show it off.
Yeah.
It looks like you have the gray finish, much as I did with the South Korean version.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad. I wish it were white because I really, really liked the white model, and this one is just But, yeah, to sum it up, it's very much like the old one from the South Korean model. It's just a little bit different. There's no Qi wireless charging, just sad.
Which is weak. Well, actually, the South Korean one I had didn't have it either.
Oh, okay. Well, most other models should come with Qi wireless charging. I didn't confirm, but this one does not have Qi. I don't know if it has PMA, but I know that AT&T does not want it to have Qi because they support PMA, which no one uses.
Taylor's talking about the two dual wireless charging standards, the dueling wireless charging standards that the Broadcom chip is not gonna. Yeah. I really want this to be fixed. But, well, find out. Taylor, go to a Starbucks and find out if it has PMA wireless charging.
Plop that down on the counter, see if anything
all
happens.
the Starbucks around here do not have any sort of wireless charging at all. But I do want to say that I addressed this issue thanks to Adam Lane, who said that when I was asking about our wish list for the iPhone 6, he said that if the iPhone simply would have either PMA or Qi, that it would be set as a standard, and I tend to agree with that. So
what if the iPhone was packing one of them?
Yeah. Because
I
case
agree.
manufacturers around the world would be like, yes, we're going to do this. And, everything would just kind of fall into place. One of them would fall off the map, and the other would become these.
Yeah.
I've got this feeling that as loudly as we've been saying, oh, Qi is the standard. All you guys who are saying otherwise are just fighting the bad fight. Then Apple's going to come out with Power Mat anyway, and we're just going to have to throw in the towel. It'll be over at that point.
Yeah.
Our luck, Apple will come out with a proprietary wireless charging technology.
Yeah. Introduce yet another standard. Yeah, that sounds
back
good.
5 years.
Well, we've got some other stuff here, so I'll look forward to hearing your deets on that. Taylor and I were just talking earlier in the day about how the only devices he's gotten to review recently have been not high end, we will say, to be polite about it. And so it is really awesome that what are you holding up there? It is really awesome
the Xiaomi Redmi.
Oh, yeah. So it is awesome that you get to be a little more mainstream with your device here. It's not the only bit of news we've got from the announcements section. Adam Dowd has been playing with another device of ours. This Surface Pro 3 that we have had in the office, guys, has gotten more mileage on the team. It's been to 3 editors in 5 weeks, and it's just continuing to make the right. It still has to come to me. So Adam Dowd decided that in order to make the most of this Surface Pro 3 review device, he would see how well it balanced on things, because one of the big things about the Surface Pro 3 is when you deploy it, it's like, this is interesting. I can lock the magnetic type cover onto the screen, and it's supposed to be a little more rigid than past Surfaces, but maybe it's still not as good as the laptop. So Adam has been balancing this thing on all manner of objects in the world, from a strange mosaic tile thing to somebody's lap, of course, but to the back of a plastic fiberglass cow.
This is like the new planking, but for tablets.
Yeah, and he's been Instagramming the hell out of it, which is great, because I finally got what I asked for when I was like, team, please Instagram. I can't be the only one posting Instagram photos. And then Dowd dropped 6 of these #SurfaceBalance photos out there. So if you're sick of them, good news, it's done. If you're not sick of them, like I'm not, I think they're pretty fun. Go check them out. #SurfaceBalance on Instagram and Twitter. It's pretty cool stuff. So
I will say that was actually one of the best things about that tablet, is that the way the kickstand is, it folds out to some crazy, not 180, but it's 160 some degrees, something like that.
Oh yeah, the nearly flat mode.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you want to be all artist tablet about it. Stephen, let me ask you a question. Is Taylor also time traveling slightly?
Yes. It's not as bad as you were last week. We would get you to pause for a second, then you would come back all of a sudden with 10 seconds of audio crammed into 2 seconds. I'm just getting dropouts altogether here.
Yeah. Taylor, you may want to check your internet connection. But while there's probably nothing you can do about it right now. I'm just letting you know. And finally, while we're talking about the Surface Pro 3 in announcements, that is not the only thing Dowd did with it. He wasn't just balancing it on strange objects in the middle of cornfields. He spent a week with the Surface Pro 3 and wants to tell you all about it. Now, I will drop a spoiler right on y'all. And I will say, y'all, Taylor Martin, so you can eat it. The final line of this editorial is, I guess Taylor's just a wimp.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, it happened.
Such a sick burn. I like it. So read it if you want to know how Dowd got from his opening line to that wonderful place. That stuff aside, Taylor, I know that you are itching to rebut that, but we have some news to get to, and I'm excited to do it. Shall we ask Jules to sound the news sound effect? Jules? We recently swapped out the typewriter for a news ticker, which I like, but has put a confused face on Stephen Schenck. Stephen?
Sorry, my mic was down there. Yeah, that sounds like a typewriter. I remember those still, I think.
It's a ticker tape thing. It's like one of those things.
Oh yeah. Stock market.
Speaking of Surfaces, Stephen, share this confusing news with us regarding the Surface Mini.
It's not that confusing. It was the media kind of messed this story up. So what happened was Microsoft, as well as many other companies, released its latest quarterly earnings reports this week. And in this filing with the SEC. It's talking about some of its recent products, stuff it did, and it made this offhand comment about the Surface Mini. Well, sort of about the Surface Mini. It didn't call it by name, but it specifically said made a decision not to ship a new form factor. So if we're talking about a new size for the Mini or size for the Surface, that's pretty obviously the Mini. We haven't heard anything about a giant size Surface coming. So this was kind of getting twisted around with people thinking that maybe that was an admission that this decision not to ship is a permanent, ongoing thing. And I don't think that's supported by the actual document. It's saying that this decision was made within this current quarter. Microsoft is not going forward with this new form factor. It could still happen at some point. Nowhere in here does it say we've killed this. We just decided not to ship it when we were thinking about it. That's newsworthy on its own because Microsoft, I believe, had yet to publicly confirm all the rumors about the Mini. It's not like there was much to deny. The Mini name was popping up in the early Pro 3 manual published by Microsoft itself. It's just saying Surface Mini in there all over the place. So it clearly was nearly ready to happen. They decided not to. Is it gone for good? Probably not. Still coming. We just don't know when. I think the latest rumor was this summer at some point, but.
That was what confused me, and that's why I sort of wanted to lead off with this. Last week we led off with a Microsoft story, and this week, I was actually really sad because I read one of those other stories that was being teased on Twitter or Facebook, wherever I saw it, with the line like the Surface Mini's dead, and that's a shame. I'm like, wait, are you serious? But you're saying that is not necessarily the case. That it's not that clear.
I remember right when this news was coming out, I saw a headline. I think it was over on TechCrunch, and it says something like Microsoft says we killed the Surface Mini. And yes, it did, but I think people sort of picked up on that kill and interpreted it as canceled permanently rather than just killed that launch plan as it was back in May. And I think people just stopped reading the actual Securities and Exchange Commission report and started just reading the headlines, which we all do. We don't want to sit through and read the entire story, so we try to get the bullet points, and we make our own decisions of what those mean, and it just sort of snowballs from there. So do not fret, Surface fans. This I think is very much still happening.
Well, that's a good thing because, as we know, the Surface Mini has a lot of fans on this podcast, or the idea of a Surface Mini does.
Yeah, I mean, we like it. I don't know if the public out there is still super crazy about it. I mean, just because we have so many other small Windows 8.1 tablets that are very affordable, that are pretty powerful, and the question is, what else could the Surface Mini bring to the table?
Yeah, but the fact that nobody's asking for smartwatches hasn't stopped smartwatches from being made, so that we can consume them and enjoy them. Let's talk about another smartphone. Let's move away from Microsoft. Talk about Samsung a little bit with this interesting thing that I saw teased elsewhere as refined design. And I don't know if that's what this is, but Stephen, tell us about it.
Yeah, so we've been looking a while now to see what's going to happen with these rumors about some sort of metal-bodied Samsung Android. Originally, we were talking about this being another version of the S5. We were going to get normal S5 and the S5 Prime, which was going to be metal, Quad HD screen, all this stuff. That didn't happen. We have the LTE-A version with the upgraded processor and the higher res screen, but it's still it looks exactly the same. So then we're thinking maybe there's going to be this Galaxy F that could be a metal-bodied alternative for people who want a Samsung that looks more like an HTC phone. And that also sort of went nowhere. And the latest iteration of these rumors have been a device we've been calling the Galaxy Alpha. We've been seeing pictures of this guy. We see the metal on it. It's pretty real looking. But it's not. I don't think it's exactly what we were all hoping for. There's a little bit of metal. There's just around the outside, on the trim, on the edge there. It's not on the back as well, and you don't know if this is real metal. Is this just like a chromed out plastic? I don't think it's what people were hoping for, and it's also looking not like a high-end device. It's looking like something very much like the S5 Mini.
I was going to say it's also quite a bit smaller in that second screenshot or second leaked photo that we've got. It's substantially smaller than the Galaxy S5.
It's not looking like it's just going to be another version of the S5. It's going to be something distinct.
Taylor, what were you saying?
It has corners that are more likened to a Galaxy Note. They're more squared.
They are indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like if you took the original Note and modernized it but didn't blow up its size at all. But no, I guess that's not right. It just looks so small next to that S5. It's peculiar. Yeah, and I wasn't aware until now, Stephen, of what you said earlier, that the bezel is, or not the bezel, but the mid plate, the border is the only metal component about it. Whereas I thought the whole back cover was going to be an aluminum plate. But
right,
even
there were
then,
those renders that F-Leaks was releasing a couple months back that looked pretty much like a Galaxy S5, except it had the metal edge, and the entire back seemed like brushed aluminum or something. That's not what we have here. So maybe there's another phone out there that's not the Galaxy Alpha. Maybe there really is a separate F.
well, I don't know. This is Samsung we're talking about. They only release like 1 or 2 phones a week,
yeah.
so yeah.
But it could have been something like this, which just looks like metal but isn't.
Yeah, the old hairline aluminum faux metal finish. But I think the G3 does that well, and actually Samsung does it really well on devices like the Ativ S, which we always say. Their fake metal looks awesome.
Their fake leather looks awesome and feels awesome. Well, the fake black leather, the fake white leather is trash.
Yeah. I think we're with that. But you know, it's encouraging at least that this design line continues to evolve somewhat. I think it's just frustrating the pace at which it's evolving, which is Samsung is really definitely not letting this glam thing go. They really like this stippled back pattern, and I guess we shouldn't expect it to disappear anytime this year. This is the direction that they're going.
And the heart rate sensor.
Oh yeah, is that what that is alongside the camera? Yeah.
That doesn't look like it's going away either.
I mean, it's sideways. It looks like the heart rate sensor, but that seems like a terrible place for it, even worse than just below the camera sensor.
Yeah. Well, it's variations on bad, right? Just for, I mean, I don't know. I think it would have made so much more sense for them to keep the heart rate sensors on the wearables and market the wearables that way as, you know, but anyway, what were you saying, Taylor?
I will say that I like the finer fake perforation than I do, you know, the one on the Galaxy Alpha than the Galaxy S5.
Oh, yeah. That does look nice.
It looks nicer than the other, which everyone has called the Band-Aid back, but
right. It was like if you had a Band-Aid, if you took the Band-Aid pattern and it was on a grid matrix and you just reduced the distance between all the points. That's what it looks like. Yeah, the finer pattern is
back from your GS5.
Yeah, just get a little further away. That's all you have to do. But yeah, no earth-shattering changes there. The next news story is from Motorola, who we're going to end the news section with the big news of the day. But first, let's get weird with it, because I'm so excited about this.
I knew you would love this thing when I first saw this.
It's so cool, and I'm not the guy who's all about wearables, though. So, Steven, what is it? So
Motorola announced this product made by Motorola doesn't make this. It's a third-party company called VivaLink. They released this thing called a digital tattoo. And what it is, it's a sticker printed on a special adhesive that's designed to, I forget the name of it, it's like e-skin or something, but it's designed to be, you know, hypoallergenic. It lasts for days. You put the sticker on your wrist and it has an embedded NFC tag in there. So you can use it just like you would the little Moto Skip accessory that came out with the Moto X last year to unlock your phone. You just tap it to your wrist. And you know, when we were, Taylor, I think you reviewed the Skip, and I was watching your video, and you're talking about how there's no good place to put this thing on your body. You were trying it like on your shirt, on down on like your belt loop or something. There was no convenient place to keep tapping the phone to it, so you ended up just holding it in your pocket, using it on its own. So do you think this would be a good option, being able to just tap it on your wrist or something, or is this just a different kind of awkward?
Well, if it weren't as crude as this, I think it'd be really cool. Like if it were something not, well, permanent, but not, I guess, nondescript, where it doesn't necessarily look like anything particular, where you could get it maybe embedded in some cooler tattoo that you have. I think it would be really cool.
It's kind of weird looking.
In the long term, yeah, but this thing is just a sticker that sticks on the outside of your skin. It's supposed to stay there for like, I think like 5 days or something.
Yeah, 5 days, yeah.
Yeah, so it sticks on the outside of your skin, stays there for 5 days, and you touch your phone to it, it unlocks. That's a cool concept, but it's also kind of stupid because it's a sticker and they're like, what, $10 or $20 for 4 or 5 of them? I don't remember.
No, it's 10 for 10. So
yeah, $10 for 10 of them. So what is that? That's 50 days. It's almost.
They said it's
2
like
months.
a month's supply, which seems to contradict the 5 days that you get out of it. But
well,
yeah, that math doesn't really work out.
No.
It depends on how often you shower. They expect you to get a little funky when you're wearing these.
Yeah. So the concept is very basic and very new, but if they could develop it into something better, it'd be cool. But this is something that I just don't see. I think it would be more logical to wear something like the Skip on a bracelet. So a bracelet with an NFC tag inside, and you tap it to your wrist, and your phone's unlocked. But
Yeah,
nobody's
well,
gonna
if
do
you
that.
could build that into a smartwatch, I think that would be
Right.
smarter, right?
The
Yeah.
problem is that NFC, when touched to metal like that, it becomes, or at least with the Motorola stickers, I have one on the back of my computer, it does not work.
Right, because the metal acts as a ground plane.
Right, so if you put it on the wristband, it has to be a silicone wristband or something like that, or some sort of layer in between them that just completely negates that connection. But it's just,
You know,
it's like I wanted one on the palm pad of my MacBook because that's where it would always be with me. It wouldn't be on my desk, which I'm always moving my computer around. So if I pulled my Moto X out, I touch it on my computer and it's unlocked. You could do that if and when computers become NFC enabled, but it's just, I don't know. This is cool, I think, in concept, but not in actual practice.
Steven, what were you?
The idea? I'm picturing like maybe a Halloween costume. You paint yourself blue. You go as Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen, and you put the NFC sticker right there in the middle of your forehead. There you go.
Yeah. I have requested and received acknowledgement and approval of my request for some review tattoos. So those will be landing on my doorstep hopefully soon. So I can't wait to try these out. I'm really excited.
I'm curious to see how well they hold up to like showering and just day-to-day wear. If these are going to last the 5 days or not.
Me too. I'm really excited to try it out, and I like that it's like it's one of the only accessories that's exclusive to the Moto X right now. Obviously, that's going to change, but the Moto X doesn't get a lot of that exclusive love because it hasn't been the world's most purchased smartphone. So that's just fun to see. And I couldn't find it. I was Googling it at the early part of this segment, but someone out there had a great headline for this. It was something like, Motorola wants you to unlock your phone with this NFC wrist nipple. And I just couldn't find it. So anyway,
they're doing their best to
there,
make this thing stylish. I mean, you have to have, because it's transparent and you need to be able to see the metal stuff in there, the antenna. There's going to be some, I mean, you only have so much to work with there. So they added a few stylistic elements to make the little spiral pattern there a little more appealing. I don't think they achieved it necessarily, but they're making an effort to fashionable in some sense. If you have a lot of henna anyway, it might blend in. You kind of get a lot of henna, Michael?
Oh yeah, no. Generally, every time that right after a podcast, I get henna'd up, and then it fades by the next show, and then I'm
He gets a little tramp stamp of a tramp on the
absolutely
like tramp, Lady in the Tramp.
Oh no, I was going to say like a tramp steamer, like 100-foot, freighter.
There's a lot of ways to
I
go
was
with
thinking a tramp stamp.
No, I get the old Chakotay outline up here, and it's nice, the trill spots. I'm going to go get some henna. Yeah.
Can I say that this reminded me of something, and I could not remember what it was until just a minute ago?
Yeah.
2012, Nokia patented vibrating tattoos.
Oh, is that true? I didn't remember that. That sounds like something.
I remember it because I reported on it when I worked for Phone Dog. It was basically a way that you could connect your phone to your body and have a vibrating notification under your skin when your phone.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have been, no. Like, I just no. Until you can make it work better, and we're going to talk about this when we talk about the Martian, but this thing, I told Taylor yesterday, yesterday he sent me this message about his tripod is broken, and this watch really wanted to let me know about that because every 10 seconds I got the same notification on my wrist of the same message, and I was like, man, I can't handle this anymore. I had to take it off. Imagine if you couldn't take it off.
Yeah. This is it. You get a tattoo in ferromagnetic ink, and your phone would send the signals to a sensor that gets implanted in your skin, and it vibrates when your phone sends it a notification. It was, I think it in terms of geekiness, I think it sounds cooler than this stick-on tattoo thing, but
no.
It would, in practice, that would be probably the worst thing you could ever do to your body.
Oh, God, you get somewhere with radio waves that are too intense, it starts heating up or something. That does not sound.
Oh God, yeah.
Jules is pulling up a screenshot of the patent.
Yeah.
So let's take a look. HuffPo was reporting on this. I'm gonna lock the camera on Jules there. Yeah, it's a vibrating tattoo, Nokia patent, phone ringing. Yeah. Oh man, I wish that maybe that's one of the things that we will see.
No, scroll down, Jules. Scroll down.
Wall Street Journal obtained a copy of the patent application and file date of September 13th, 2011, and then we have some illustrations of belly tat, but that you could also have like a square tattooed on your wrist if you wanted it embedded there. That's just curious. These are those crazy patents that you just never really, you see them announced and then nobody ever does anything with them. Somebody just squats on them for 20 years until they're obsolete. Let's talk about something that's probably happening. Taylor, save that thought because I want to get to the Moto X Plus One, which this was the first news that greeted me this morning, and I got I had an emotional roller coaster with regard to this, and I'll describe that in a second. Stephen, you want to tell us about
downs there?
Yeah, it was really confusing to me. Go ahead.
Yeah, so a whole bunch of images of what's supposedly a late-stage Moto X prototype. This may not be the final design, but probably pretty close to it, have leaked. We get to see the phone front, back, and sides, and it looks pretty much like a Moto X successor should look. Some of the devices we saw earlier this summer were a little iffy. We weren't quite sure what we were seeing here. This thing, I don't think anyone's arguing that it's not going to be a new Moto, presumably X. I don't see how it would be an E or a G or anything, although it does pick up some design elements from those. It has these front-facing stereo speakers like we saw on the E. The back is pretty much just like the X, except for a few changes. The Motorola logo no longer looks concave, which I know we were big fans of, in this little finger divot on there.
Wait, hold up. It could still be a dimple.
I don't see it. It looks like it's flat.
It doesn't need to be.
It looks like it's set in a little bit, but it doesn't look as
it's not
nice
curved. I'm not.
It better be, because if it's not, I'm not on board for this. Yeah, if it doesn't have a dimple, I'm gone.
That's not the weird thing around back. Is this odd flash layout we're seeing, where rather than having a flash separate from the lens of the camera itself, there's these two tiny, what appear to be white LEDs embedded right along the little ring surrounding the camera. And they're tiny, and they don't seem to be dual color either, but there are two of them. So the presumption is this is what the flash is going to be. And that sort of harkens back to an earlier rumor we saw, or earlier leak we saw, where there was this render supposed to be the Moto X Plus One. It looked kind of mid-range. We didn't see some things we were looking for, specifically a flash on the back. So maybe this is how Motorola's doing it from here on out, and that's why we were a little confused.
This flash configuration is confusing to me, and Taylor's holding up his Nexus 5 here with to demo the flash placement of that camera module. What's your point?
My point is it looks a lot like this bump here, with a lot of black around the actual camera lens. And I think that's because this placement, you probably need that black to prevent any kind of glare.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about, because these flashes, though they are tiny, and if that is indeed what they are, they're so close to the camera that, yeah, maybe that this big old camera bezel on the back is needed for insulation there. That's a good point, Taylor.
Yeah, because there are actually some iPhone cases that you can get for your 5 and 5S and the 4s that if you put them on there and take a picture with it, all you get is this like hard reflection off the case, and every picture turns out horrible with these cases on. So
there are other components of the Moto X that are equally interesting. In particular, these kind of metal side rails that.
Yeah, this is new.
Wow, I mean, yeah, how peculiar these are. Like, so it would appear that they've gone, if this is real, that Motorola has gone with aluminum for the border of the device, and they've incorporated the kind of breaks in the metal for the injected polycarbonate gaps for antennas that we've seen on the iPhone 4S and the iPhone, all the iPhones and the HTC One line.
Yeah.
And the Lumia 925? Not 925.
The Lumia 925, yes, and also the 930/Icon has the two up by the headphone jack too.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the SIM slot has actually moved to the top of the device too, because if you notice, the trim along the edges is really thin.
Yeah, it's really narrow.
You can see it in the middle. It's thicker, and then it tapers towards the edges.
Yeah, the thing still looks like when you turn it to its side, and no matter what angle you look at it, and this has been the case with all the Motorola phones since the X, it either looks like some kind of lost sea animal, or like a surfboard, or some kind of aerodynamic thing. Like it's just a weird shape that looks like it would behave well in a fluid. Yeah, right. It almost looks like a battery is swelling and unevenly or something, which is not a bad thing. It's just it's a very distinctive Motorola look. I don't know.
It's
So
very nicely stylized, is the way I like.
Well, this is what, see, initially I didn't really think I liked it very much at all. I looked at this thing with the giant camera module and the Motorola logo beneath it, which is as big as the camera bezel, I'm now realizing, and which may not be a dimple. And I'm like, okay, wood finish, that's fine. But then I'm not sure that the flowing Motorola design language plays nicely with the aluminum side rails with these gaps that we are used to seeing on other phones. And then the on front the silver bars at top and bottom.
That
I'm never going to
complain.
complain.
Any bigger than the original X. It was the size of the Motorola logo last year.
The camera?
Yeah.
No.
I'm not pulling up pictures here. It looks like it was.
Where is my Moto X? It's not in here. Yeah, Taylor's going to get his. We're going to get to the bottom of this right now, Stephen. But so the dimple though on the existing Moto X is not highlighted with a different color. I'm going to lock the camera on Taylor so we can see.
Okay, you know what? I'll admit it looks bigger than it was on the Moto X, but it also looks like the Motorola logo here is bigger as well. So both things are bigger, but to scale.
All right. Okay, but this on the X Plus One, the Motorola logo is offset in color. You know, they're graying it out. They're doing something different, so it's much more prominent, which I'm not a big fan of.
Just looking more at this now, I wonder if that Motorola logo is a button this time around, because there's a pretty distinct cutout around its edge.
That's a good point. I don't know that would be cool. No, because the power button is alongside the volume rocker on this.
On top, wasn't it? No.
That's good. I would have been
on the
upset.
side.
I don't like
It's above the volume rocker.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a. Oh well, who knows? If it is a button, that's a whole different line of thing. And if it's a button, then it should have an LED ring around it, because why not? But the whole point is that I saw this thing in the morning. And I kind of immediately didn't like it. And then I read a couple headlines that said something to the effect of, "This is Motorola's beautiful new Moto X sequel," and then my thinking unconsciously and involuntarily changed. And I realized the extent of my weak-mindedness, and I was like, because I really have to like keep an eye on this when I'm actually opining, because I'm like,
you do like the Moto X Plus One.
Exactly right, and I'm predisposed to like the X Plus One anyway, just because I love the X so much that I bought it when I didn't really need to. So it's like, hey, I'm just going to be very careful when it comes time to explore this device. Which I hope comes soon. Yeah.
I want to say that I don't actually like the colors. Like, I don't like that bamboo or the blonde wood. It's not really blonde wood. I don't know what that is. I don't like that style of wood, and I don't like the silver trim. But if this phone, I mean, theoretically it should come to Moto Maker, a black front, black trim, and ebony on the back.
Can I just?
Yeah, we heard you might get new options this time around as well.
What if you could
did we? That was going to be my question, because I'm a little scared about that.
Yeah, I feel like
I thought about like what in Lenovo kind of fiddling with the Moto Maker options, and I don't know, but we haven't heard anything. Haven't heard anything that says the Moto Maker might be going away. We've heard the opposite, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it's coming back. Seeing now if we can pull up that old. Here we go.
Metal trim, Michael. Blue metal.
Blue metal trim. I would be sort of amped on that.
Oh yeah,
that would
leather was the big rumor.
Oh, that's right. Yes, alternate backing materials, including leather in at least 2 colors, right?
It'll match my chaps.
Yeah, 4. Yeah.
I have a feeling, guys, that the Moto X Plus One is something we're going to be talking about a lot in the next few weeks, because we're expecting it the next few weeks. So let's not dwell on this too much, but this is the most exciting leak I've seen in a while. I mean, the Galaxy F stuff has shown up, and I've been like, okay, whatever else we're covering, I'm just like, okay, this is cool. The Remix just launched. All right, that's kind of cool too. But this, this is a very cool and compelling story, and I just kind of want to leave it be until we can actually address it.
I just wanted to say, I'm surprised that you weren't digging that, because with the wood and the metallic ring around the lens there, it looks kind of like a porthole. No.
It does look a little like a porthole. It does look a little nautical, yeah. But I would go with darker wood, and I like Taylor's idea of a colored metallic border, like some kind of
an anodized
or red. Yeah, that anodized aluminum.
No, you won't go with red because you don't like warm-colored phones, Michael.
That's true, but then again, on the counterpoint side of that, I don't have the phone that I was going to raise onto the camera view to demonstrate the other side.
There's a bee in Michael's recording booth.
Everything is going wrong today. I was so excited about today. This always happens. I'm like, I'm ready for the podcast, and then it's a giant clusterfuck. And then the other days, I'm like, I'm so tired. I don't want to do this, and it's a great show. Anyway, I don't have the phones that I'm supposed to be showing off, so you guys chat for a second. Let me go find those before we do gadgets in hand. What?
You need one of these cell phone racks.
Oh my God. I do need one of those. Taylor's holding up what looks like a CD rack from 1998, but it has phones in it. I want... Is that a CD rack, Taylor?
No, it's actually from Quirky, the people who make the Quirky Cordy, which is this little cord holder.
Is that tight?
All right, Taylor, tell us all about that while I find these phones.
Yeah, I'm taking all the cords. I have a cord management system on my desk, which is this. These are really popular.
I was going to ask, does the stand have a built-in thing for charging them as well? A little USB mini micro?
No, but you can use these really thin pieces on the sides to hold your cables. So this is also a cable management thing. I just found it one day. I was walking through, I think, Walmart or some unlikely store to have something like this, and I found it, and everybody asks about it in videos and all kinds of stuff. I really like it.
The whole thing reminds me of this IKEA thing I have for holding pot lids. It's adjustable size. It's a little too big for that, but hey, a smaller version, it might work in a pinch.
Well,
I found the devices, by the way.
The problem is I need a bigger one because all these phones, this was made for phones like 5 years ago, and all the phones are too big for this thing now.
Taylor, this you're gonna have to tell us more about that rack in a hot second, because now we have we are experiencing all the wonder of crossfading in Google Hangouts, and we get to talk a little bit about some of the devices that we have had our hands on. This is a segment called Gadgets in Hand, where we let you listeners and viewers ask us questions about 1, 2, or even 3 devices that we have in the review labs or in the offices or in our homes, wherever we have.
Only integers, no weird rational number.
Correct. Nothing that is divisible. We don't do that here, and I'll thank you to stop writing in and asking for it. On today's Gadgets in Hand, the Amazon Fire Phone with dynamic perspective, as it says on the box, which is really cool, unless it can't detect a face, in which case it doesn't do it. The HTC One E8, which we have in beautiful electric crimson, and the Martian Notifier, which I am wearing, but more excitingly, perhaps, Stephen Schenck is also wearing. Stephen, hold that up again so everyone can see you demoing a gadget, which never happens. Yes, the Martian Notifier is a smartwatch that Stephen and I got our hands on thanks to AT&T, who put one in everyone's swag bag at a recent New York City event, and we decided to cover it because, damn it, there's too much love being spent on expensive, crazy smartwatches, and why don't we look at the basics for a hot second? I don't know any of the people at Martian, but I did. So I guess we're starting with the Martian because I started talking about it. Stephen, I want to hear your thoughts, but I want to say that I chose my headline title for this review, which is called "I'm Sorry, Martian Notifier, You're Cooler Than I Thought You Were," because I was not openly dismissive of them. But Taylor, do you remember my reaction when you dragged me over to the Martian booth at CES?
Yes, I think we've completely, totally flip-flopped. Because
yeah, because you were enthusiastic about it, but now you're not?
Yeah, like at PepCom, I saw them. I'm like, hey, some of these are actually really cool because they had a red watch, and I love red. And I walked up, and orange. They had an orange one. Walked up, and I'm like, wow, these are really cool. They're kind of basic, but they actually look pretty cool. I'd like to see some more styles like this brought to different smartwatches. And Michael's like, no, we don't need to see that. And Tony is just kind of like, I don't care about that. I'm going to go over here. And I think he went to the open bar for a little while, and we sat there and heard about 2 sentences from this lady before Tony comes back, and he's like, okay, we got to go buy.
I felt so bad because I felt like Tony for once because I just didn't want to hear about it. I was like, these are not really... I was so pissed about the turnout of wearables. Like CES was pushing it like it was going to be a huge thing, and then it really wasn't very good. And so I think that kind of affected my attitude. Yeah.
There was a dedicated section on the show floor for wearables, and it was the most disappointing section of CES.
Tumbleweed goes by.
Oh my God!
God,
there were
yeah.
a lot of people there, but all the products in there were, one, non-working. There were like 2 actual smartphones that were working in there. Most of them were prototypes or just literally 3D printed concepts. Lord. And most of them were like this, but even more basic. Like there was one the screen was just a couple pixels. It's just a couple square pixels, and it would pop up with an email envelope or a phone.
Not even like contents of the subject line, just
Right.
sort of telling you what it is.
There were some on the other extreme that were like, it's like, yeah, the smartwatch does everything because it's the size of an iPod Touch strapped to your wrist, and like even to the point where like the band was asymmetric. It wouldn't, it just like traveled up your forearm as you wore. It was just some of this stuff was so dumb.
It looked like those big like straw hats with the ribbon.
No, it looked like the conference table rock in Arizona. What's that famous landmark? The table rock. That's what it looked like. Anyway. The point is, we were let down a lot by the section. So when the Martian Notifier's in the bag, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, whatever, let's check it out. And then I put it on, and I've been really enjoying it for the past 8 days or whatever it's been. Stephen, what's your experience been like?
Yeah, I sort of started out a little slower than you. I didn't dive right in. I took my time playing around with it, and I wasn't using it full time until recently. I'm sort of coming around to it, but I have a few hang-ups that I just don't love certain features. The software, like you talked about, needs a lot of work on the smartphone side. The app, it's functional, but it's not the most elegant thing in the world. And my problem, and this is why I was hesitant to write a rebuttal, because I know my complaints are not mainstream complaints. I don't like that when I turn this thing off, I can't shut the app down very easily. It starts like 13 separate processes and does not want you turning them off individually. And
I agree with you. The fact that you can't manually disconnect the watch, and the fact that the phone will continue searching for the watch forever if you just turn the watch off, like I had to do yesterday after 15 notifications in a row about Taylor's tripod. Like it's frustrating. Yeah, it's not ideal. The app is a real soft point about it. Yeah.
And some of the stuff on the hardware isn't great either. There's a nice there's an LED that lights up, tells you different status things, but you can turn it on. It's a multicolor LED. You can turn it on white to be used as an on there. See how it's not even overwhelming Michael's camera.
I mean, you can navigate down a hallway if it's pitch dark.
Pitch black
really need to see
room, but
yeah,
it's not much use.
Yeah, but when it's notifying you, it's cool that you get a blue and a green or a red. I think that's pretty cool. I like it. There was
this moment yesterday afternoon. I was out for a bike ride, and I strapped this thing on ahead of time. I have my headphones on. I'm listening to music. I have the smartphone connected, and I get an email, and I'm able to just glance at my wrist and see it without stopping or anything. I think this was the first, I finally get how smartwatches can be useful moment.
Yes.
And from there, I just sort of scrolling. If I'm driving later, I see it. Oh, this is because New Jersey, I can't use my phone while I'm driving, but I can check my wrist for the notification. So it's growing on me.
Most people will never get it unless they use one.
Yeah.
That's why every time someone's like, should I get a smartwatch? The only thing I can ever say is you have to try it before you'll understand what I'm saying about it.
Exactly right.
If you never get it, you'll say, I can pull my phone out, but you can, but it's different. It is totally different, and Tony doesn't quite get it yet, and I'm hopeful that when he tries a smartwatch, he'll finally understand that it's totally different.
Yeah, well, I think he did. He tried the Gear Fit for a while, and with the S5 or with whatever he was using, but he doesn't. Yeah, no.
I'm thinking
Tony might be a lost cause. I don't know. And there's some people who will try it and still find it, and that's fine, But most people who complain about the excessive amount of attention the smartwatches are getting have never tried it, and then it's my least favorite comment to see. Of course, is on a smartwatch post, spend about 13 hours getting that thing together. You post it 5 minutes later. The first comment is like, I just don't see the point of smartwatches. Shut up. So anyway, but on this exact same vein, fun fact, Gadgets in Hand is supposed to be about listeners asking us questions, and I have looked through the entire Q&A list, and not a single question was asked about the Martian Notifier. So we're going to move on. And if you have one that you're dying to get it in now with the Q&A app, and we will see what we can do about it. Until then, moving on to the Amazon Fire Phone, which I have here. Stephen also got some hands-on time with it in New York City when we were there. This is the Amazon Fire Phone. It looks a lot like a Nexus 4, as we were saying. In the hand, it feels a lot like an iPhone 5C, maybe 5S on a good day. It's got the glass back. The panel on the front is, I believe, 4.7 at 720, which sounds, really crappy to say, but honestly, I didn't.
Good enough.
I had to look it up. I think we've had this conversation about 1 billion times. It's indeed 720p is plenty fine for my purposes, and it runs Fire OS. So let's just hit these questions here. I really like this one. This is from Brendan Price asking, does the Fire phone deserve as much hate as it's getting? And that's not much of an exaggeration.
Is it getting hate?
It's getting poorly reviewed.
It's getting confused. People don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, it has all these features that are really only helpful if you're an Amazon customer.
Well, that is true, but it also has a bunch of features that are the other opposite extreme, that are plainly evident and really eye-popping to regular people, whether you're an Amazon subscriber or not. But it's not really clear what utility they add. It adds no utility, actually. And what I'm talking about is dynamic perspective, which is difficult to replicate on video. But yeah, Steven?
It's fun. It doesn't need to be anything more than that. It looks neat.
It really does. And, you know, so everyone talks about the dynamic perspective 3D view. Like when you look at it, you can, on the maps, in the maps view, you look at the map, and if you tilt the phone a little bit, the Yelp reviews for like businesses pop up. You know, that's really cool. But one thing that not a lot of people talk about is the status bar along the top of the display, which shows battery, signal strength, time and date, and all that kind of stuff. That is normally hidden on the home screen until you tilt the device about 5 degrees off axis, and then it appears. So it's the sort of like hands-free equivalent of Windows Phone, which used to do that. It used to hide the status bar until you swipe down from the top. It's pretty cool that with the Fire phone you don't even have to swipe. You can just look, you just tilt it slightly off angle, and that stuff pops up. Is it terribly useful? No, but it keeps that stuff hidden in the to provide a clean canvas in the time that you're not tilting it. So you know, that's cool.
Yeah, but Microsoft has gone back and added that as a standard feature. Like it's there permanently.
Right. In Windows Phone 8.1, which I don't like at all. I think that was a really bad move. It clutters up everything and makes everything look, frankly, crappier. So I like a hidden status bar until I want it, and the fact that I can call it up merely by rotating the phone a tiny bit, that's really cool. I mean, I don't think Amazon is getting quite enough credit for.
But is it popping up though when you don't want to be seeing it, just by nature of handling the phone and becoming distracting as a result?
Yeah, but if I'm addressing the phone, if I'm looking at the phone with a 0-degree angle, if I'm just straight at the screen, I will very rarely will I be like doing this. Will I be, you know, rotating it on its axis for no real reason, unless I'm sharing it with someone else, in which case I have to tilt the phone at them anyway so that the cameras can pick up on their face and adjust the perspective accordingly. Viewers will notice that when I switch this, when I switch this toward the camera view, it will not dynamically adjust the perspective unless it's picking up on my face on the screen, which I guess it is.
I think you need to put a mask around your webcam there.
Yeah. So does it deserve as much hate as it's getting? This is the question we're going to have to answer in the full review, Brendan. I think that I don't know the answer yet. I only just got it yesterday, and I've been wrapping up the E8 review in the interim. So check back next week. We're going to talk about this phone again next week. You know, go ahead, Taylor.
My problem with it is that Amazon is hinging this entire phone. The whole reason the phone exists on dynamic perspective and the Firefly service, which we talked about last week, which is already actually kind of on iOS and maybe even Android. I don't recall if it's in the Android app, but it's hinging the entire existence of this phone on something that is kind of cool but doesn't really have any sort of actual utility, except for games or something fun. It's just, to me, it's a lot of effort for something it could have done for building an app or not building a phone with 6 cameras on it. I mean, it's a lot. They reinvented the wheel for what? Why is Amazon in the smartphone game? That's the question that a lot of people can't answer.
I feel like it's not a bait and switch, but I think that it's trying to deliver some of these features just to get people's attention. This is like we talk about when Samsung launches one of the new Galaxy phones that have these 30 new weird little things it can do, and they demo really well, but they're not very useful day-to-day life. That's what this is. This gets you interested in the phone, but it's Firefly that's going to keep you going, or it's going to keep benefiting Amazon in the long term and getting people using these Amazon services. So I don't know they necessarily have to be really valuable things in order to be worthwhile for Amazon to be doing them, so long as they just get people interested in the first place.
That's a good point, and that's the business perspective on it, and whether that's right or wrong, nobody can say yet. I will say, from a personal use perspective, it has been incredibly refreshing to use the Fire Phone as little as I have, or no, I phrased that incorrectly. It has been incredibly refreshing to use the Fire Phone despite how little time I've been exposed to it, just because it is a new UI. I'm so familiar with stock Android, with iOS, with Windows Phone, with the various Android skins. I don't do a lot of custom ROMs, so it's like, or custom launchers even. So picking up a phone and not knowing exactly how it works, and then gradually learning that this is the ribbon of recently used apps and recently used everything at the top, and when I stop on one of those icons, below it a list is populated with either functions or information. And the fact that, like, if I'm inside the email app and I want to pull up a context menu, all I need to do is flick my wrist, and that can happen. I mean, that's cool stuff, and it's the kind of stuff that reminds me of the more fun days of smartphones, which Taylor is talking a little bit about in an editorial later today, when you could buy a new smartphone and reasonably plan out a 4 or 5 day period when you have to get used to the interface because it's so different. But we're in such a homogenized space now that it's just becoming a little bit dull. Even if you switch between platforms, it's like, okay, the notification shade's going to be at the top, and I can probably double click on something for some shit. And it's like, this is entirely different. It's alien, and I think that's pretty cool. I'm going to move on to the next Q&A question, my face having frozen on the screen. Hopefully my audio is still coming through. Gentlemen?
This is not a very embarrassing pose or anything.
Well, that's good. That's excellent. Let's see. More questions on the Fire Phone. Is it worth the $200 on-contract price? From Ram Krishna. Boy, this is another one where I'm like, I don't want to answer this until I do the review, but at the same time, probably not. Steven?
I think talking about the on-contract price is the wrong thing to be discussing. Is it worth its $650 off-contract price? No, probably not. Or at least that Amazon should be selling this for, presumably they're making a profit on this thing, and I think that's the wrong idea, that they should be trying to get this out there with a razor and the blade model and make their money back on the services, which is not what they're doing. This is why so many of us are surprised about how Amazon released this thing, and the carrier exclusivity isn't helping either. The pricing is crazy. Should it be $200 on contract? No, probably not. It should be free on contract, but I wouldn't consider that a deal breaker when thinking about the phone. If you're going to be getting it on contract anyway, whether it's $100, $200, nothing out of pocket, I don't think makes a big difference. It feels wrong, though, compared to what else is out there.
Yeah, do you think that this is a product of Amazon not making its money back on services? Because, I mean, they've been doing this for, what, 3 or 4 years now with the Kindle.
With the Fires, yeah.
Yeah, the Kindle Fires. And they're changing their model. They're trying to make more back in profits on the cost of the phone up front. Do you think that's because they're not actually turning a profit on trying to earn their money back through services?
That's a very good question. And we always see how popular those Fire tablets have been. I mean, just look at the number of people having them, but we don't talk that much about what effect that has on the bottom line. I know Amazon just released its quarterly figures. I didn't see the full report, but my understanding was that they weren't good, or not as good as they were expected to be. I don't know if that's because of the hardware side or just stuff they've been doing. I imagine that all of this hardware, I mean, the Fire tablets, the phone, even just the ebook Kindles, are probably a very minor part of Amazon's income as a whole. So maybe this is some other reason why they've been getting the results they've had. So I don't know.
Business Insider had an interesting story about that recently, within the past couple of days, where the headline was basically, Amazon hasn't turned a measurable profit in about 20 years, but investors don't seem to care. And that brought me back to reality. I went and read that story, and I realized that the company has turned a profit, but it's still mostly venture funded, and it just gets it has had such a difficult time raising a profit, but it continues to get to be revered, as this model of success. And which is, I think, part of the reason why I didn't know for a long time that Amazon wasn't really consistently making profits. But so Taylor, that's a good point. I mean, it may well be this may well have been sold to decision makers as another way for consumers to more easily buy Amazon content. I will say that the addition of Prime is really, really important.
That sweetens the deal, yeah.
It certainly does. Now, I really don't think, and I'm sorry that I jumped to the next Q&A question prematurely, but I really don't think that the Prime membership is enough to justify a $199 on a 2-year contract. No, I think there's almost...
What does Prime cost now? They raised it, didn't they?
$100.
Yeah, what is it, Taylor?
$100 annually.
Yeah.
It used to be $79 or $80 a year.
Right.
$20.
Another question here from FFMC, and I'll get back to Kelvin Alonso's question in a second, is can the Fire Phone use any Google Play apps? That's the thing, right? You got to sideload the actual Google Play apps onto the device if you want to use them, and even then, the Google Services Framework is required for a lot of that stuff to work. Really, you shouldn't think of this as an Android smartphone because it's not in any meaningful sense. It's a Fire OS device because it's their forked version of Android. Now that said, there's a lot of cool stuff in the App Store, like Instagram and Evernote and other huge titles, obviously Facebook and Twitter and stuff, but you're not going to get the whole Google Play catalog. Go ahead.
But you do get one free premium app per day, which is nice. It's not always
helpful,
but you do get that.
And they give you a bunch of Amazon coins with the purchase, so you can use those in whatever apps you want.
Yep.
That's true, too. Yeah, so there's a lot of value added, especially, obviously, if you're an Amazon subscriber. And, God, it's just... I have not dove into the Amazon ecosystem pretty much ever. I buy a lot of things, physical products on Amazon, but I've never used their streaming catalogs and stuff. So that's one of the things I'm going to be looking at pretty closely here as I use the Fire Phone over the next week or so. And just to compare that ecosystem with the Google one that I'm most familiar with and the Microsoft one that I'm slightly less familiar with, and see how it all stacks up. But to answer your question, Kevin, that I skipped over before, is the dynamic perspective, what's it like? Essentially, is it just a gimmick or whatever? We talked about it a lot before. I will just say that it is the best 3D effect I've ever seen. That's not saying a whole lot. We had some really crappy 3D phones a number of years ago, but this is something way different. I'm going to go check on something on the other side of my office quick. Stephen, would you speak to that very quickly? Because you're the only one else who's laid eyes on this thing.
Yeah, I haven't seen those auto-stereoscopic 3D phones like the Evo 3D, so I don't have a great point of comparison, but yeah, it looks smooth. It grabs onto your face really quickly, so you just pick up the phone right away. Because it has to know where your eyes are in order to deliver this effect like it does. So it's sort of like the screen is like a window that you're seeing through. So you could hold the phone still, and as you move your head back and forth, the content you're seeing on the screen will change. And they spend a lot of time making sure it does that incredibly well. It doesn't hiccup, and there's a redundancy built into those 4 cameras along the edge, so even if 1 or 2 of them are obscured, it's still going to work just as smoothly. So it's impressive, but then at the same time, it's kind of a one-note thing. It's the apps that I saw. I just played around with the map, and I didn't get to see those Yelp pop-ups, but you can look around buildings, the 3D rendered ones, and it doesn't add a lot to the experience, but it feels cool. It feels like you're working with something from the future. It's not just like a still map that's on a portable device. It's like a computerized future map, and it's really fun to work with. And I think that, in stores, that's going to be a really, really impressive thing for people playing with this phone for the first time. There's nothing like this that I don't think is available on any other platforms. So just getting the phone into users' hands and having them go home with it, that's, I think, could be a very successful thing for Amazon here.
I completely agree, and I think it's a two-forked observation that I have about dynamic perspective. In that, in the one hand, it's that very gimmicky thing where it's like, okay, you turn the phone in your hand, and the icons have a 3D effect, and okay, whatever, yeah, I guess that's cool, and it works well, whatever. The other side of it is the side that's more compelling to me, where when you swipe out the list, the menu list from the left-hand side that says apps, games, web, music, videos, etc., well, it just looks like a list of words at first, but then you rotate the phone, and then little descriptors emerge to explain what they are. Apps, a new paid app for free every day. Videos, watch 200,000 movies and TV episodes. And all it takes is like a 5 or 10 degree shift of the phone in your hand to reveal that stuff. You bring it back to 0, and it's there. Like the Amazon rep who was demoing this to me in New York said it's stuff that you get used to, and then you miss it when you're not using the Fire Phone, when you're using something else. And I can definitely see that. I understand that completely. So
I'm really curious to see what third-party developers do with this. I don't want to use the phrase "this is going to make or break the phone" because I don't think it will. I don't think dynamic perspective is going to affect the long-term success of the Fire Phone. But it'd be nice if developers really latched onto this. I know Amazon has announced at least a couple games that take advantage of this. And that's cool because the first time I really heard of this sort of technology was through gaming, because there was an old Nintendo, I think, DSi title that was all based around this using a camera to track your eyes to give a sort of perspective effect to the phone. And that was like a hidden picture game where you would tilt the phone around and try to align things in the scene. So it just opens up some new avenues for developers to play around with ways to interact with the phone that could make for some really compelling titles. The question is whether or not Amazon has a sort of clout with developers to get them producing this stuff for a phone that might not see a ton of interest, at least initially with these high prices and everything. So it may be a self-defeating thing, but it has a lot of potential.
yeah, no, I concur. And most of the questions, by the way, have been in the same vein. Digging through them here, and let's just talk about Firefly very briefly. I know we touched on it before. I've been slightly disappointed. This question is from Kelvin. Oh, Kelvin Alonso, who's asked a similar question before. Do you think Firefly is a waste? Because if you think about it, if you see something you might want, you either own it or you're in a position to buy it, i.e., at a store, unless you're at a friend's house. I mean, well, there you go, Kelvin. I mean, that's the thing. If you're at a friend's house, you're like, wow, what is that? I want to snap that up and maybe buy it. The thing is, if Firefly works well, I think it can be compelling. It hasn't necessarily worked all that well in my experience. I can read barcodes. That's pretty cool. I've scanned 2 polar seltzer bottles.
Recognizing products too well?
That's exactly right. I tried to. I photographed a what's it called? A Yankee candle, which is a very recognizable thing, I would think, and I often buy Yankee candles on my Amazon account. So you would think that Firefly would notice, and it didn't. It just, the Fireflies kind of hung around it and,
Is it just a candle?
Alighted upon it. Well, it's a jar candle with the Yankee Candle branding,
Okay, that's the thing.
label,
If it didn't
and the
have
text
some clear logo, then I can understand it not recognizing it, but...
Right. No, it's just, it had the label and the plain text as well, and Firefly is supposed to recognize text too. But anyway, these are early observations. Like I say, the One E8 is what I'm still focusing on at the moment because the review video has yet to go out, and I think we're going to transition to the One E8 unless we have a question from Taylor or
to comment on Kevin's thing there. I mean, I find myself constantly going out and comparison shopping with my phone. Just last night, I was looking for bourbon. And I found a couple bottles I liked, and I wasn't sure about the pricing, so I just snap a pic with my phone because I'm not running an app that has a built-in price comparison thing on there. But I do think that a lot of other people might be like me and take their phone with them and use it when they're out shopping. They see something, they're maybe not going to buy it right then, but they want to get more info on it. They want to remember it for later. And I think in that case, what Firefly is doing could be very useful to them.
And it's going to be useful in the sense that it's going to raise awareness of it, because you can do that right now, and you've been able to do that for years with smartphones. With Bing. I remember Windows Phone rolling that out with the Bing image search, and I was like, oh, sweet, I can just log this, and it's great. But Firefly does it in a much more ornamental sense. It does it in a way that's supposed to be very pleasing.
Pretty little fireflies fluttering around.
Exactly right. Yeah. So, Taylor, do you have any thoughts before we move on to answering questions about the One E8?
One question and 1 point. Steven, I've done exactly what you've been doing for years, and every single time I go out to a physical brick-and-mortar electronic store, or actually any store, I always check Amazon and Walmart and all these other stores online just to check their prices to see, who has the best price. And a lot of the time, if you don't do that, you're not going to get a better price, because a lot of the stores, especially Best Buy, if it's sold through Amazon directly, they will price match anything. I got the little amp that I got for my car stereo for doing that tablet mod. In the store, it was like $150 or $200. I got it for like $70 some bucks because they price matched Amazon.
There you go.
Like, that's half price.
Flex that muscle.
Yeah, and the question I have is, can you take a picture and import that to Firefly, or do you have to take a picture through Firefly?
I believe you have to take a picture through Firefly itself, but I'm going to confirm that for you right now since I have Firefly up and there. So Firefly also allows you to identify songs, I should say,
Right.
and it allows you to identify movies and TV shows just by tapping, which is very, very cool. And I think I should have mentioned that a little bit earlier, but I did actually forget. It does not look like there is any capability to do so, although I have flicked the phone and I've got a side panel menu here. Firefly enables you to simply point your camera at things you want to identify. Use the buttons. Firefly-enabled apps. There is a position for Firefly-enabled apps
Maybe
in
an
this
app
side
could
panel.
let you import stuff.
It's possible. Yeah,
Exactly.
and
Not being able to import something is a huge missed
I'm wondering
opportunity
what is the use case you're envisioning here where you would want to import it rather than take a picture live?
If I'm in a hurry and I'm in a store, I'm like, ooh, I need to take a picture of that, and then I'll worry about pricing later. Because that happens a lot. I don't want to stand around in a store, sit here and take a phone out and snap a photo and sit there and go through things. I'll snap a picture, and then I'll go later and look up pricing or something to that degree. Or, I don't know, anything, shopping from my iPad and saving things to Evernote, and then I could import a picture that I've saved to Evernote from, a screenshot or something. I don't know.
the nice thing about this, I will say, is that if you're gonna open the camera on the Fire Phone, you can open Firefly on the same, because it's the same button. You press the button once for the camera, you press and hold for Firefly, or vice versa. So it's very easy to launch Firefly if that's any consolation to you. Good stuff. The Fire Phone, we're going to talk about this next week when I actually have some real stuff. I wanted to answer as many questions as we could right now, but this is as familiar as I am with the device, and I think we've got that. Taylor, yeah?
I do have one more question. Can you save a search?
Can you save a Firefly search?
Yeah, so you take a picture of something, it gives you all these results, and you save it.
Oh, I would hope so.
Well, it automatically saves. It automatically puts them in an ever-growing list of things you have Fireflied.
There you go.
So yeah, right now on the home screen, I've got the Firefly bug, and then beneath it is my 2 recent identifications, both for Polar Seltzer, the finest seltzer you can find.
Hipster.
Hipster. Since when is seltzer drinking a hipster thing? Let's move on to the HTC One E8. Now, sadly, I can't talk about its electric crimson finish, or I can talk about it, but Jules has very helpfully put up a Polar Seltzer ad on the screen. Thank you.
What's going on with your video, Michael?
Well, I don't know. When I left the podcast for a second, I went to see if anybody else was in the office. I'm the only one on this connection, yet for some reason I have no video. And this is a shame, but it's all right. We won't talk about it. We'll just power through. Because the HTC One E8 is in my hand. And Taylor, you like what as what? It's fitting that the minute I ask Taylor something, his feed freezes. I think Hangouts is having a bad day. I think we should move on. Let's talk about the HTC One E8. It is a plastic M8. It is glossy. It picks up a lot of fingerprints. It's got a lot of skin oil collected upon it, and I am not a fan of carrying it compared to the One M8, but in and of itself, it's a pretty good device. Let's answer a question or two here. The first question
about the E8?
There are several actually. The E8 is a hot topic. This is from Ram Krishna in the HTC One E8. Do the pictures look good on the screen? As I don't transfer them to the laptop, so is it good enough for the phone's screen? Ram is asking a good question here because the camera on the HTC One E8 is not very good. I had Adam Lane help me out with a piece on this, talking about the deficiencies in the E8's camera. It is a 13-megapixel module, but it's the same one they're using on the One Mini 2, the Desire 816, and therefore it's not very good. Yeah, Taylor?
I was going to say the Desire 610, but that had an 8-megapixel camera, I believe.
Yeah, actually, I was going to throw that to you to ask you about that, but yeah, no, I know. The thing is, everyone gets all excited when they hear this. They're like, wow, the E8 is the thing I should get then, because the M8 only has that BS 4-megapixel camera. But just like the comparison with the One Mini 2 versus the M8, the E8 is significantly inferior in color saturation.
How good you had it with UltraPixel, man.
Yeah, exactly right. It makes this phone, just like the One Mini 2, makes the ultra pixel camera look really good. So for anyone,
That's intentional. HTC is purposely ruining the cameras in these phones. Like, no, you guys should have 4 megapixels the way to go. It's ultra pixel, baby.
that's the reigning conspiracy theory in the comments.
I love your interpretation of HTC.
Yeah, HTC is a bunch of like cigar chomping generals from 1960s Cold War films. Deploy the ultra pixel. So the question is, do the pictures look good on the screen? Yeah, Ram, this is a great screen. It's a 5-inch IPS panel, the same one they're using in the M8. Well, actually, I don't know that because it does look different, particularly through sunglasses. But it's roughly the same.
1080p. It's
1080p, exactly. It's a beautiful panel, and the photos do look good on it. Yes, indeed. So if you don't if you don't send your pictures to anyone, if you just keep them on your device for safekeeping, then this camera probably won't bother you if you're thinking about the E8 for real. I kind of dogged its finish earlier, but I want to make the point that this device is also offered in matte finishes in white and black, which have much fancier names than just white and black. But I don't know what they are. Electric crimson and white and black. And the matte ones are really cool. And I think there's a blue one out there too. So, yeah, Ram, if you are just looking at your phone's pictures on the screen, you're going to be just fine. What's more worth it, the E8 or the One Mini 2, asks Brendan Price. Hot damn. Taylor, do you want to weigh in on this one? I don't know if you've had experience with either one, but just
I haven't, but just initially I'd probably go with the One Mini 2.
Now, why is that? Because I think I'm in the same boat, despite the fact that that's not the... I think you and I have nothing in common with anyone else.
Yeah, it's still metal, isn't it?
It sure is, and it's a beautiful metal, too.
That's it.
Yeah.
There you go. I think the specifications are probably going to be a little better on this phone, correct? On the E8, a little bit, maybe?
No. They are the same exact specs, except for the loss of... The E8 does not have an IR port, and there are band differences, and dual SIM is available on the E8 as well.
One M8 Mini. One Mini 2.
But the Mini 2 is 720p, isn't it?
Oh, I'm sorry, man. I'm still stuck in the So yeah, the specs are way better on the E8 because it is just the specs of the M8. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'd still probably go One Mini 2.
Yeah. The One Mini 2, you're getting I think a Snap 400 or something like that, and it's.
What's the pricing look like on these two? Do you recall?
I do not have it off the top of my head. I just
that seems like a pretty important thing to consider.
Yeah, if you want to look that up, because I want to kind of tailgate on Taylor's point. Like, yeah, I too would probably go for the One Mini 2, and it's just because I have such an aversion to this glossy plastic. And to be fair, I haven't played with the matte one, but even then, I was so in love with the build on the One Mini 2, really, really was, and I still am. And I think it's just the perfect size. I think it feels great, and the material is excellent, and you've got boom sound and everything that makes a one almost in a really small form factor. So I really like the One Mini 2, but if you want cutting edge, that's not it. That's mid-range to the extreme. The E8 is high end. So.
Yeah, but glossy.
Well, only in this one. In the other two, it's matte. So, you've got that option too.
Why did HTC not learn from Nokia's mistake?
What?
The 920. The Lumia 920.
Yeah, the Lumia 920 came in matte finishes too.
Just a few. It was like the white, the black. The red one was glossy as ever.
So was the white one. The white one was glossy as hell too, and the yellow one. Yep.
The matte finish one was... Just
the gray. There was an international one that was like dove gray that was matte, and I really wanted that one because it looked like a phaser, but I couldn't get it because it was international. But HTC, they're doing the same thing, Taylor. Some are matte, some are glossy. I don't know what your beef is.
Variety is the spice of life, fellas.
Well, yeah. Nokia has never gone back to glossy, have they?
Well, yeah, the 1520 came out in red with glossy and white glossy. Yeah. Oh no, not white glossy. White is matte, but red glossy. Anyway, let's move on. Jules has a good... Oh, here's Jules locking onto the thing there. Yeah, we got some Lumia 920 pictures and versus 900 matte and gloss. Look, speaking of Jules, I want to answer his question. It's not in the Q&A, but it's the least we can do for our production assistant. What ecosystem would you feel more comfortable paying into? Which machine do you really want to pay into? Especially with in-app purchases. The whole UI is basically an in-app purchase. I think Jules was talking about the Fire phone a long time ago. I don't know. I don't remember what it was. Jules, I'll answer your question next week. Jules also helpfully floated some specs at us. The One Mini 2 was 1.4 gigahertz quad core, which I think is, it is the Snap 400. So anyway, back to the one.
I can't stop thinking now that there should be a show called Matt and Gloss about like a team of detectives in the fashion industry or something.
I would watch such a show. You want to make it? Let's make it on our weekends. Let's make it a web series. Good call. Let's see. I'm moving down the line on E8 questions here, trying to give everybody a turn. Good-looking phone, but how will it compare to the M8 on the updates field? Stefano Scarpa asks. Anybody's guess, but I think HTC is one of the companies that we have to worry about that a little bit less these days. Wouldn't you guys say? And I mean, HTC is big on providing very loud and quick.
Yeah, they're making a big show about this, but then I also wonder if the E8 is not as much of a phone that's a front and center product for them, so maybe they could get by ignoring it and not so many people would notice. But at the same time, if they're making an update for the M8, it seems like they could push it to the E8 with very few changes. The hardware is it identical, or pretty much?
Like the underlying hardware?
Yeah.
It's almost completely identical. Yeah, there's just a couple of clock speed variations in the M8 for different markets, but the IR port and the dual SIM support are the only ones that are really...
So I would assume that if they're having the resources to keep these frequent M8 updates coming out, there's little reason why they couldn't do the same for the E8.
Yeah, no, I don't see why they would. But then again, you have different markets. You have software customized for different markets. It's a tough call, but I wouldn't necessarily be worried about it from HTC. I think if I were going to buy an HTC phone, I would feel fairly confident that the update situation is going to be okay. But it is a real concern, though, because obviously the M8 is their flagship. It's not. The E8 is very high end. It's almost the same thing, but it doesn't have the clout that the M8 does. Partially because it's so new. We don't know what the E8 rollout plan is going to be. We don't know if it is ever going to become as widely dispersed as the M8, but I don't think it will. The M8's the crown carrier. Yeah.
Can I just say that every smartphone should just have an infrared blaster on it?
Yeah.
Everyone should.
You can say it. I don't know if I care that much.
I agree.
I mean, I didn't until I actually started using my phone as a remote for my television. And now every time I come home, I just pull out the phone and turn on my TV. Like that, it's just a thing. I don't even reach for my television remote.
You actually do that, huh?
See, I prefer the physical remote, but I still like having the option there. I mean, why not?
Yeah, I like it too, especially if I'm like having a real lazy day and the remote's across the room, but I've got my phone in my hand. I'm like, all right, I ain't getting up. I got a nice couch groove going. I ain't gonna move. Anyway, the E8 is about $570, Ram Krishna informs us. Thank you for that.
That's a bit more than the Mini 2? No.
Well, the Mini 2 was, man, wicked pricey when it launched.
I was not having good luck finding pricing info on those two a moment
ago. I want to move on down. The HTC One, this is an interesting observation from Nicholas Domenichini. I think I got that right. The HTC One E8 seems like HTC's version of the iPhone 5C. A lot of people have said this, and I don't think you're off base there. I mean, it is, except with the exception that I think the analogy would be better if this were a One M7 in plastic, because that's what Apple did. Yeah, they didn't bring out their latest flagship in plastic. They brought out last year's flagship in plastic. So
I don't think that's giving E8 enough credit, calling it a 5C.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is comparatively the more impressive device. And we may, sorry, I skipped past that particular one. Guillermo Cuevas asks, can you compare the HTC One E8 versus the iPhone 5C? I don't think that's in the cards. I would like to, and we will try, but considering the Fire phone and what's coming after it, I don't think we're going to have the time to do it. So.
But Michael, you love doing these, don't you?
Comparisons, the absolute bane of my existence. But they're fun. They're fun when they're done. Right, Taylor?
Yeah.
They're fun when they're complete. I'm going to see if I can fit in one more E8 question here, and this is a very, very popular one, and sadly my answer is not very good, from FFMC. When will the E8 be available in the United States? What a good question. I'm sorry, I can't answer it. We don't know yet. U.S. availability is still not clear. Steven, any news on that?
Well, no, it depends how quickly you can get to Michael's house. Here is his address, everyone.
Whoa!
No, I haven't heard anything.
Sound booth is armored. Don't you even try it. Yeah, I haven't heard anything either. We're not going to hear about that in a little while, but for a little while, rather. Thank you, everyone, for sending in your Q&A. I want to get to just a couple loose-end Q&As here that have been upvoted like crazy before we move into listener mail. Before we do that, if you're just joining us, I want to give a shout-out to the Pocketnow Weekly sponsor, Swappa.com. If you're looking to get some cash for your gently used phones or tablets, or if you want to get something new to play with, check out the site. They have awesome customer service, great prices, and many, many devices to choose from. Check out swappa.com/pocket now so they know where you came from. Thank you. What do you think, guys? I don't know if you have the Q&A panel up, but we have a lot that have been upvoted like crazy, including one that I rather like. Why is Taylor's mic significantly quieter than the other two?
Taylor's just soft-spoken.
You know?
I've been having this problem lately. Is
Oh.
this better?
No.
No? How about that?
Oh,
That's a little
yeah. That's exciting. We like that.
Something.
Thank you for that heads up. I wish I'd selected that before. This is a Moto X Plus One question from Francois BD. Will the Moto X Plus One be launched before, with, or after the Moto 360? Will there be a special relationship between the two devices? I love this kind of speculation. What do you guys think? Taylor?
You selected it and it disappeared.
Oh, well, it's up there.
He just read it.
I know, I wasn't listening to him.
Thanks,
I
buddy.
think we've actually talked about this before, haven't we? I would think that they would be together. That's just my theory. I mean, it would make sense.
That's the prevailing
so
theory.
Yeah, because the Moto X is coming up on 1 year. Motorola said Moto 360 by the end of the summer. The time frame just kind of matches. So
It's just a rumor, but it's one that's very easy to believe.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also, you know, we've seen a smartphone manufacturer do this before, not with great success on the sales side, but it certainly was convenient from a marketing perspective with the Note 3 and the original Galaxy Gear. And that, in particular, I always thought was a really nice marriage because the Note 3 was so big that you didn't necessarily want to be taken out of your pocket all the time.
That plays off that you don't want to, or it makes the appeal of the smartwatch that much more clear. When you have a device that big, you're comparing it to.
Right. And, you know, I'm not convinced that there's as powerful an incentive to do it here, just from a practicality standpoint, because the Moto 360 is about as big as the Moto X, it looks like.
Motorola needs a new flagship just to get people's attention for this thing here. I love how they keep pushing the Moto X so hard with the sales this summer. It seems like every single week, and the guys still buy this thing. It's a really good deal. And it's cheap, but geez, man, it's a little long in the tooth by this point.
It is, and it still works wonderfully too with all the new additions. Taylor just cooked up that lovely video a week or two ago of 3 fun things to do with the Moto X. It's aging very, very gracefully, but it is not something I would buy right now, certainly.
Dude, I pulled the Moto 360, the Moto X out for that video, and I left my SIM card in it. I carried it. Yeah, I left the SIM card in there until yesterday.
You're riding that wave.
I love that thing, man. Every time that I can ditch a review device and go back to a normal phone for a while, I always go back to the Moto X. I just really adore it. It does. It feels like home. I really like it. Anyway, it's not just
because parting with mine.
Back. You're selling yours?
Yeah, I'll probably post it later today.
You should sell it on swappa.com/pocketnow. I wish I'd asked you that question 20 minutes ago. And finally, the last Q&A before we get to listener mail. LG G3 or wait for the Moto X Plus One? Brendan Pfeiffer. Well, damn. Brendan, you know what we're going to say on this. Never buy anything new. Always wait.
Wait forever.
Don't buy anything. Now, if we're less than a month out from the Moto X Plus One, if all of the prevailing rumors are to be believed, and therefore I would not recommend buying a flagship right now. Wait to see what the other guys bring into the table. Even if you end up choosing the LG G3, at least you've made an educated decision. You haven't just bought it, then 2 weeks after the review period closes, Motorola's like, here's this thing you really want, you know?
I guarantee we'll be saying wait for the Moto or wait for the Nexus 6 by the time the Moto X Plus One comes out.
Or you...
Yeah. At the same time, I just don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know exactly what Taylor said because he froze just then, but You buy the what?
I said buy the G3, and then you sell it on Swappa.com, and then you buy the Moto X Plus One.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, do that. There is that one other thing I was going to say. I think even when the Moto X came out and then I was doing the Moto X versus Nexus 5 back in the day, I don't think there was any point at which I was more excited. I was excited enough about the oncoming Nexus 5 to consider ditching the Moto X. And maybe that's a closed-minded perspective, and maybe it's wrong, but I don't know. And then the Nexus 5 came out, and I was like, okay, it's fine, but it's not the Moto X. I mean, it's like, whatever. So whatever. I don't think we're going to run into that problem. But who knows? With Android Silver, who knows, Stephen?
Whole new world.
Indeed. I think it's time for listener mail. Jules, sound the chime. Nice. It happened, and it was good.
So impressive.
Listener mail today is from Sahen Rai, Matt Lawrence, and Paul R. And Stephen or Taylor, I would love to have you read the first one as I switch on over to mail mode.
Oh, I've got to open up my Gmail tab.
I got one here.
Thank you, Stephen.
Sahen Rai writes, "Hi, Mr. Fisher." You know, there are some other of us who participate in this podcast. Mr. Fisher, I know you like short and concise questions, so I'll try and keep mine as such. I'm ecosystem agnostic. Would an Android phone with an iPad be better, or an iPhone with an Android tablet? Thank you for your awesome work on the podcast.
That is a good question right there.
You
can hand it off to me if you'd like.
Yes, Taylor, why don't you answer this one? I've got my own answer, but I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, my personal preference is Android phone with an iPad. The reasoning, because the iPad simply has a better ecosystem than Android tablets. I hate to say that, because as much as I love Android and all the apps, the tablet situation is only slowly improving. So you're going to get more media and content on your iPad while you actually get more functionality out of an Android smartphone for the time being. Because once the iPhone 6 and iOS 8 come out, they're going to be really level pegging.
I lost Taylor. Oh, there you go.
Jesus Christ.
Really?
Rule Hall. It's all right. Your audio is fine. Just say it again.
Okay. I said my personal. I don't know what part I dropped. Where I dropped
pegging.
Off.
Right after pegging.
I said unless you count some extracurricular stuff you would do with your Android phone. Android tablets aren't bad. I really liked the Nexus 7. It's just there's something about it. I really want to have
it's like a big phone still.
Yeah, it really is, and you get a little different experience out of an iPad versus an iPhone, and it's the same software. It's just the tablet applications are so much better on iOS. That's basically. I like to get a little more functionality out of my phone, and then jump over to the iPad for some productivity stuff and games and things like that. And it's just better on the iPad.
You are not wrong, Taylor. I know you've probably got more to say on this, but I just want to agree with you. I mean, you are entirely correct. I am in that exact same boat. I don't have an iPad around as often anymore, but when I did, dual-wield tablet and phone, because I don't use tablets much anymore, oddly. And when I do, I tend to switch over to the 2520, just because I sort of want that. I want to like maintain my Windows cred.
This is what I was going to say. I can get down with the idea of splitting ecosystems between the phone and tablet, but I'm sort of leaning to I want the Android phone and the Windows tablet. Maybe not the RT, but if I get like the Pro 3 or something, that could work.
This is my daily setup. It's one M8 and an iPad Mini. I totally blanked on what I was just about to say. The reasoning behind that is I can get all of my Google services still on the iPad. So if I buy a Google Play book on the iPhone, or not the iPhone, an Android phone, I can read it on the iPad. If I watch a movie on my phone, I can pick up.
Yeah, right. Of course. No. That's a solid point. No, you're right.
Way around.
You can, but
on iOS
if you want more variety, though, like it's okay because I deal with it, right? I'm looking at my 2520 right now, which has RT, so it's a bad example. I would get a real Windows 8 tablet if I had the money to buy it. But the thing is, you are sacrificing a lot in the way of mail convenience. I'm looking at the mail app right now, which is beautiful, but because I use Gmail, all of the stuff that would normally be routed into social and promotions is just dumped into my inbox, so it sucks again.
I have it set up anyway, though. Not everybody uses those.
Nobody uses those tabs, Michael.
What the hell are you guys talking about? Neither of you gets enough spam then, because man,
spam goes to its own thing.
Yeah, I have filters set up for all sorts of things.
Well, in that case, then I have a Windows RT tablet coming to both of you. Enjoy it.
Hooray!
No, so I'm willing to make those sacrifices and convenience, though, for the freshness of using a different UI and a different ecosystem too. Like I like using OneNote on Microsoft products more than I do on Android ones, because it kind of like tweaks my mind a little bit. It doesn't twerk my mind.
I saw a hilarious
OneNote on Android. That's interesting on Android, and I don't like it. Anyway, the point is, I think we are all in the same boat. There's basically no circumstance under which I would say, totally, you should get an Android tablet and use a non-Android phone. It's difficult. Steven,
I prefer an Android tablet over the iPad, though, but that's just me being a hater.
Is that why are you a hater?
I don't mind the limitations of the Android tablet ecosystem. I have an Android tablet. It has the apps I need on there, and it's easier just to have that continuity between ecosystems. I don't think I would gain anything by replacing it with an iPad, but that's just me.
One of my biggest gripes about Android tablets, and this is the exact same one that Brandon has had for a long time, is standby time. I can charge my iPad, I can use it just heavily through a day, leave it with 50%, walk away for 4 or 5 days, pick it up, and it's like 49, 48%. I can use an Android tablet just as hard as I want, still leave it at 50% at the end of the day, come back tomorrow or the next day, and it's at like 10 or 20%. And that's the problem.
I've turned my radios off. Maybe that helps with my battery life.
I can put on airplane mode, and it does the same thing. Brandon will confirm it. And it's just the things that are going on in the background. And that's the thing about the way I use a tablet, and I think a lot of people use tablets, is I don't use it all the time. So I don't necessarily...
Excuse me for 1 second, guys.
The door. Power it down all the way instead of standby.
But that's just...
those 30 seconds you have to wait for it to boot.
I don't power down my MacBook ever unless I just reboot it and leave it running all the time. That's kind of how
you roll.
I do things. Yeah, and it's just something that I do. I drop a tablet and then I'll come back 2 days later and I want it to have the charge that I left it at, or at least close to it. So yeah, and Android, it just drains whether you have airplane mode or not. And my M8 did the same thing. I had on airplane mode. I charged it up, unplugged it, sat it on my desk while I was using the Moto X. I came back a day later, and it had 10% battery, sitting on airplane mode. So, my alarm's going off on Pebble.
Michael, you were doing something before we interrupted you there a minute ago?
Oh, he went to the door.
Oh, he did. And we lost him.
We did. So, yeah, that's just my take. I've had probably... somewhere over 40 tablets in my day. So that's just where I stand. I love my Android tablets. I chose Android for my car because I put a tablet in my car. I didn't
have to worry about the battery, at least.
Yeah, I didn't have to worry about that, but it's just more useful. You can do more with it. So if you're looking for that extra functionality, I would say that Android is the way to go. But splitting it up, my personal preference is Android with an iPad.
I think we got our answers.
Yes. Should we move on without Michael?
I think we can. I think it's allowed.
Yeah. I think Michael's back.
Michael's trying to be back. Can you hear him?
Yeah. I heard the bong of your mic.
This is unbelievable. This is the worst show we've had in 6 episodes. I will tell you that. The FedEx guy came during the podcast for the first time ever. Which is bad news for everyone. My first audio file is saving, by the way, because when I got up to get the door for the FedEx guy, I ripped out the mic cord. So
this will be fun to edit together.
Files. Yeah, this is going to be great. Jules, you're going to have a blast editing this show together. It is going to be the worst thing ever. I'm recording the second of my sound files now, but that's okay because the thing the FedEx man delivered is an internal delivery from another team member, and it is destined for Jules Wang anyway. So it's okay. I don't feel too bad. It's a good thing. We'll talk more about it later on. What does Jules say on the old thing? I don't there is some fun going forward. Compilation album by various artists. Let's talk about the next piece of listener mail. Who's got it, and who's going to read it?
I got it right here from Matt Lawrence.
All
Hey
right.
guys, I'm a big fan of the show and listen to every episode on my commute. My question today comes from my love of the BlackBerry brand and BB10. There's no question that BlackBerry is having some trouble and has been for a couple of years now. However, the fact that it's still around after all the woe it has suffered seems to point to the fact that people still have faith in the Canadian smartphone maker. Real-world limitations aside, what would be BlackBerry's saving grace?
Saving grace if it were to come out with a brand new
If it were
device.
to- Am I cutting out again? What is
God, Taylor, you need a new internet service provider. So what would BlackBerry be? What would BlackBerry's saving grace if it came out with a new smartphone? Is that the question?
Yes, and what would you make? What would make you instantly switch from Android, iOS, or a Windows Phone 8 device?
Jesus,
If it printed
I have
money.
no answer for this question. The only thing, and I think this stems from what I've been writing today, is a crazy off-the-wall form factor.
Okay, it would have to, but even then you wouldn't go for it though, because you would need your ecosystem. So for me, the answer would be a licensed, legit, non-hacky, side-loady crap way of running not just the apps from the Google Play Store, but Google sanctioned Android apps, the that run on the Google Services Framework.
Really want a BlackBerry that
Hangouts, Gmail, that stuff. What, Steven?
Really, you just want a BlackBerry that runs Android.
But I don't. No, I don't
No?
want that because BlackBerry 10. I really love the card paradigm. I love the peek function, the way the inbox is laid out. I really like a lot of good
What if
stuff.
it was like a BlackBerry launcher?
Yeah,
No,
I was about
no,
to
I
ask
couldn't
that. What
do
if
it.
BlackBerry made its custom UI just as senses for Android? That to
because-
me would be better.
No, that's just fakery because it feels like BS. It's like using a custom launcher that emulates iOS or Windows Phone in Android. It still only goes so far. Like the minute you, for example, pull down the notification shade, whatever skin you're using disappears in favor of stock Android. You're
Something
not
about like a Fire OS thing.
Yeah, like a forked version of
Yeah.
Android. Sure. But
Okay.
then
But
they
then
don't
you wouldn't
need
have
to
the
do
Google
that.
framework.
But no, hold on. The Google framework idea is a complete pipe dream. I'm just saying that, like, if that were possible, I would like that to happen.
Would that it were?
But the thing is, the BlackBerry doesn't need to do a forked version of Android because BB10 is, it's stable, it's fluid, it's a little on the sluggish side in some areas, but otherwise it's really great. So, I don't need to see them build a new OS. I just want to use my Google services in BlackBerry 10. And if that could be made to happen, I mean, that would be the key for me. And Taylor, for you, it's a wild form factor.
Well, wild form factor and maybe Android. Like, there's no. At this point, I can't see going back to a BlackBerry, and that's coming from someone who used to be a die-hard fan who would not give up his BlackBerry for anything, and now, after having used the Q10, which I think is kind of I think I need to use another actually fully fledged BlackBerry device without a keyboard on it just to see and experience BlackBerry or BB10 in its fullest form. Because the Q10's display is just too tiny. What is it, 4:3 aspect, and it's just
No, it's not.
That was
It's
square.
1:1 aspect ratio. Yeah, but it's 720p. It's 720 by 720.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, but it's just so tiny, and I would need a bigger display. But
I'm with you on that because actually I love the Q10. It's my pet BlackBerry. It's the BlackBerry I carry when I want to be weird and funky. And I got so amped when I could sideload Android apps on it, and then I tried to use Instagram on it, and I couldn't even see a full Instagram picture in the screen. Like I had to scroll the picture up and down to see the picture. I was like, I can't make this work. Damn it.
Yep.
So anyway, let's move on. I have one piece of mail, and Stephen, would you mind bringing us home with yours after I read this one? I mean, with the one remaining piece of mail.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. This one is not on the rundown. It was added at the last minute because it is the only Martian Notifier question we got today.
Oh, yay!
Yay, right? Hey, Pocketnow Gang, says Thomas Gell. I love the show and all the wonderful content that you produce. Thomas, with the exception of today, I agree and I thank you. I was wondering.
Around.
This show is a lost cause. Michael, if the seemingly less intrusive smart features of Martian Notifier make it a better companion to your daily life than either the Pebble or the Android Wear devices, Does it make it easier to dismiss a notification and continue with your previous task, or would you rather have full control like with standard smartwatches? I ask because I'm a WP user, Windows Phone user, and have been using the Kairos smartwatch, which, like the Martian, is more traditional. I think this suits me better, as I believe a watch should be primarily a watch and second, a companion to my phone. Cheers, Thomas Gale. This is a good question. It hasn't made my life easier, Thomas. No, I think there are some bugs that are really significant that have made my life a little more difficult than it is with the Pebble, for example. Stephen obviously echoed some of those concerns before, particularly with respect to the app. Stephen, you're still in that.
Even in the watch itself, I don't like it doesn't seem like there's great use of the inputs. So there are two hardware buttons and this accelerometer for sort of tapping on the screen. You can use it to dismiss notifications, but it's not very satisfying, and it's not always clear when you're interacting with it or just not tapping hard enough. And one of the buttons goes really horribly underused. It's generally used just to pull up the voice dialer on your phone or to interact with the menus, but they're not. It doesn't seem very well thought out. I don't know. Or I'd like to reconfigure how I'm interacting with the notifications when they pop up.
I'm with you on that, and yeah, the in particular the screen button thing seems pretty janky. Like you don't even have to press the screen; you can just whack the thing on the side, and it'll register.
Well, I got used to it. I sort of liked, but I wish there was a better acknowledgement of when it's registering that input. I like a click or something at least, maybe just the flash of a light. I don't know.
Yeah. There's definitely room for improvement, but if you're, if Thomas, you're a guy who, as you say, believes a watch should be primarily a watch, and second, a phone companion. This is definitely the road to go down. I mean, these things are really, terrific in that respect, especially since once the battery dies, the watch doesn't. You can still tell the time with it. I mean, that's right.
One thing that started bugging me after a couple days is that the analog watch component, and I like how it's a big part of the face. It's not exactly centered on it because to get the room for the screen on there, they had to push the hands up a little, so it's...
Oh, I see. Damn it, I didn't notice that until now, Stephen.
You're never not going to be able to see it.
I can't unsee it. Well, I still think that these are worth the time. I'm not sure that they're worth the money. $129 for a Martian Notifier seems a little on the pricey side to me, considering... Yeah, Taylor, what's the current price of the first-gen Pebble?
$150.
Yeah, I would rather pay a little more and get apps on the device, get a bigger screen, be able to see whole messages rather than just subject lines.
That said, the first-gen Pebble is pretty janky looking in retrospect.
To me, the Martian Notifier is very crude looking, and it honestly looks like a maybe $10 or $15 watch that you would get at Walmart.
Yeah, I don't like how the OLED display on it, I can't really see it good here, it doesn't really blend into the face of the watch. I mean, just for comparison, I have this old, this is dirty as hell, this old Sansa MP3 player. This is probably 10 years old. Has a mirror finish and an OLED screen, and it blends almost perfectly. When it's on, you see the text, but you don't see that border around it. It really makes it stand out.
That's a really good point. Yeah, this was a thing that happened back in, I think, around 2004, 2003, when flip phone manufacturers started doing this finish, and the outside of the phone was either mirrored or black, and the OLED would shine through it, but you wouldn't be able to see that a screen was there if the screen was off.
It looks a lot more premium.
It absolutely does. You're right. That should have been implemented here, and for if that were here, a $129 price point, I think would be more justified. But
I think the pictures may not do it justice, because I think this thing probably feels a little more premium than it looks in pictures. I can't say because from the picture it looks like it's cheap, flimsy, lightweight, and just it does not look premium.
It's definitely not lightweight.
Yeah, well, it looks it. It very much looks like a cheap little plastic watch that you would get from Walmart or something.
Huh, that's interesting. I guess you're... Yeah, I can see how you would...
Yeah, having never touched the thing, yes. So I don't know what it feels like. It just looks very, very cheap.
Huh. Well, Thomas, so this... Maybe that's a great way to answer it, Taylor. I think you need to go look at one in person or buy one with the expectation of returning it if you don't ultimately like it. But you do have to try it in person. What? Oh, no, no. Well, Steven, I'm not saying that like
I know.
buy something
I
to be
feel like we've been
insured.
saying this on every show. It's just go buy it, try it out. You don't like it, send it
The
back.
thing is,
Do your
return
research
policies
first,
do
people.
exist for a reason.
I
But
know.
you know,
Yeah,
it
as
doesn't
long as
matter
you
how
don't
eloquent
abuse
we
it.
are
You
on
don't wanna pay
video.
those.
You know, I can spend 1,500 words of a script telling you how something feels, but sometimes you just need to get it on your wrist.
Yeah, I mean, like Michael said, return policies exist for a reason. As long as you don't abuse them, as in you go buy something with the intention of returning it in a few days or weeks, I think that's fine.
Okay.
If you're not satisfied, then yeah, you can return it. It's just don't go out thinking I'm going to buy this and return it just because.
Yeah, no.
I'm going to buy all the smartwatches and return all but one of them.
That's
Don't
right.
do that.
Yeah.
Well, the last question is a bit of a big one. So let's see what we can do about getting through it.
Alrighty. This one is from Paul R. from Thailand. He writes, "Dear Pocketnow team, love these roundtable discussions you guys do, by the way. Always great to listen to them while I'm working or gaming. My question is this. What's the deal with flagship gimmicks and spec stunts? I'm, of course, talking about things like HTC's Ultra Pixels, LG's Quad HD display, and Samsung's heart rate monitor. Seriously, why have these things when the devices themselves either can't adequately support them or just don't take full advantage of them? HTC would have had a near flawless phone in the M8 if they had just gone with a 13 or 16 or 20 megapixel camera, while LG would have done fine with a lower resolution screen that'd be both brighter and less of a drain on the battery. And whatever Samsung is spending on trying to implement half-baked fitness technology would be better invested in higher build quality materials. So why the stunts? Why shoot themselves in the foot like this? Wouldn't having tech reviews that say, hey look, this phone's got it all, be more effective way to grab attention? Thanks again. It's always great to listen in on your podcasts. Best regards, Paul." He has a good point there.
He does, which is why I selected this one. Yeah.
Well, part of the problem is these companies are trying to differentiate. And this, again, circles back to the piece that I'm writing today, which is the evolution of the smartphone. 10 years ago, smartphones had 20 different form factors. You could differentiate by using some sort of different form factor, build quality, some cool, unique hardware feature, and today, every single phone looks practically the same, give or take a few design cues, and the way to differentiate is through different specifications. And that ultimately leads to a more boring, landscape, but you also get these one-off features that don't necessarily mean a lot by themselves, but if you see how they shape the future of smartphones, they sort of make sense. So Quad HD, yeah, I don't really see a point in that. I don't think many people do. That one's just kind of there to say, hey, we did it, we were the first, or one of the first. Ultra Pixels has changed how we view smartphone cameras.
Yeah, Ultra Pixels, I don't think that's a gimmick. That's just it's focusing different on what's important about cameras.
Yep, and this fitness thing, while Samsung I wouldn't say is necessarily doing it the right way, is showing how smartphones, at least in the next 5 to 10 years, will be more integrated with our health. How you can just take your phone to your doctor and say, hey doc, this is what's been going on with my body. Here's all the data from my phone that it's gathered. Tell me how to fix me. And I think that's exactly where certain things like this go. I wouldn't necessarily see all of them as gimmicks. Right in the here and now they are, but in the future they mean a lot to what smartphones will be in, a half decade.
Yeah, I agree. I think you really nailed it early on, Taylor. I think when you said just differentiation is the thing here. When every phone is sharing essentially identical form factors, you can differentiate based on materials, but you really can't do much in terms of design because every phone needs to have a big screen. That's what society has decided that we do with our smartphones, and we consume a lot of media on them, so we need them to be giant rectangles. So you need these features, and I think the pressure to roll them out in order to differentiate yourself outweighs the sense of caution, if indeed there is one at a given company, to say, hey, this isn't exactly perfect yet. Shouldn't we wait and refine this? No, if we don't do this, the other guy's going to do it. So we have to push it out now. We'll fix it with an update. We'll fix it in post, and that doesn't always happen. Yeah, but you know, it is the way of it, and we can't blame one company versus another. You know, they all do it, and to varying degrees of success. It would be really awesome if this were not the case, but I think in order to compete, in order to play the game as it stands, every manufacturer has to do this.
And I think it's interesting if we look at those various things that we got called out as these gimmicks in that email there, the Ultra Pixel, the Quad HD, and the heart rate monitor. All these manufacturers are approaching these things in very different ways. HTC's taken the Ultra Pixel and has sort of run with it as a recurring thing on its premium product line. It differentiates between the M8 and phones like the E8 that don't have this. And with the Quad HD, I mean, it remains to be seen what's done there. But Samsung, with the heart rate monitor, is putting it on everything now. I mean, not just on its highest end phones, also on mid-rangers. It's on the Samsung Z, its Tizen phone. So I think that's less of a gimmick than just something Samsung has started now that's going to be everywhere. It's just part of its ecosystem going forward. Samsung phones have heart rate monitors.
Yeah, and which, you know, for better or for worse. I think that's like a, you know, a not so great example of what can happen with this. But the other part of the question, why the stunts, wouldn't having tech reviews that say, hey, look, this phone's got it all, be a more effective way to grab attention? I mean, no, sure, I think it would, but I don't see any. No tech review would say that. The headline might, but the review won't. Look
at phones like maybe the OnePlus One, or what's the new, I can't pronounce it, Xiaomi, the Mi4.
Yeah.
That's a great all-around phone that doesn't have a standout gimmick, and it's, I mean, yes, the press is sort of acknowledging, wow, this phone looks awesome, but I don't see any kind of big public grouping around it. I don't see it popping up on social media like, oh, I wish this phone was coming to the US, because it's not, it doesn't have that hook. And I think that just really great features alone doesn't cut it.
It's very difficult to do everything great. And as much as I hate to say this, the one company that has consistently done that is Apple. But you see the phone that consistently does just about everything better than, not better than, as good as all the competition. And I'm saying its camera is almost as good as this, its battery life is almost as good as this. It puts all of it, not the best in everything, but it's better than most at everything.
Yeah.
And it's boring. Like, everyone is bored with the iPhone. Like, that's what you get when you play it safe. You get a boring phone that isn't significant in any way other than it's better than most. It's, on average, it's good. So it's hard to explain why that doesn't work as well as these gimmicks that make something stand out. The iPhone is a bad example of that only because everyone has one, and everyone's at least tried one. You see them everywhere, so it's a bad example from but from the perspective of tech enthusiasts, it's one of the most boring phones on the market. And look at the M8, not the M8, the Moto X. It does everything except for taking pictures really, really well, and it's not selling well. It's not that exciting to the general public or even a lot of tech enthusiasts. So when you don't step out and push boundaries and even try some gimmicks every now and then, it turns out boring. Now, would I have rather seen HTC put a really great camera on the M8? Yes. But also, by that same token, it wouldn't have gotten nearly as much attention as it did, because the Duo camera is different. It's pushing boundaries, it's breaking down borders, and moving the market forward through a gimmick, yes. But I think the long-term effect of something like a gimmick in the now is better than every single manufacturer playing it safe and trying to do everything perfectly.
And I also think there's something to be said about the difference between phones that are trying to do a lot of things really well and then also have this little gimmick versus phones that are just built around this one thing. I'm thinking explicitly about those curved screen phones we saw arrive late last year, where the whole point of this is, hey, look what we can do. It's not, I mean, yeah, they especially the G Flex was a pretty solid phone otherwise, but those we don't see, I don't think, as often, where it's just the gimmick and that's it.
I think that there is enough material here for an entire show worth of answers, and it's a really good observation on the industry in general, Paul. Thank you for writing in, and please do again. We like insightful pieces like that, but we do have to wrap this show up while we still are relatively on top. And I want to make a point about the Q&A. Shut up, Steven.
I'm not saying nothing, man.
We've got to wrap the show up before it completely explodes. I want to make a point that the Q&A, the way Q&A works on Hangouts, folks, is that we enable it at the top of the show, and we cannot disable it thereafter. So even though we only have a designated time for Q&A, we continue accruing questions after we've closed it. And sadly, we just don't have time to answer it because the podcast would never end. And that might be fun to experiment with, like a 24-hour podcast someday, but today is not that day.
You can only hang out for 8 hours.
Oh, that's right. All right, so we'll have to do an 8-hour podcast one day. But the thing is, I want to thank everyone for sending in your questions. There are some great ones in there. Please send them to podcast@pocketnow.com if in fact you want them answered on the next show. Jules makes a good suggestion, a New Year's extravaganza podcast. Now, that would be fun, although
No.
I'm not convinced yet. No, Stephen hates that idea. So there are some great ones here. Please write back in, write to podcast@pocketnow.com with that stuff. I'm going to start the goodbye litany unless Stephen or Taylor has anything else they would like to say today.
I've said my piece.
Yeah, the restroom is calling my name.
Yeah, I'm with you. You made fun of me for my bladder last week, and now we're
one of those Japanese toilets that knows your name and everything.
No, bidet is a funny word. Folks, if you are curious about the transition music used on our podcast, it's called Radiation. It's a ringtone on some Android smartphones, and it's also a full-length song by Ali Spagnola, an artist with millions of fans around the world. If you want to join their ranks, visit her YouTube channel, youtube.com/AliSpags, and her website at alispagnola.com, both of them linked in the description below. Until next time. That's going to do it for this episode of the Pocketnow Weekly. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode. And please send us listener mail. As I said, podcast@pocketnow.com. Also be sure to find us on Twitter. Taylor tweets about his pet frogs and his own podcast at CasperTech, CasperTek. Stephen is the strong but silent type at Stephen Schenck, StephenSchencck. And I talk about Star Trek, smartphones, and not much else at Captain Two Phones. It's Captain.
Is there anything else worth talking about, really?
Not as far as I'm concerned. You can also follow Pocket Now on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Google+. And if you enjoy the podcast, we sure hope you do, you can help us grow our audience by leaving a review on iTunes, Xbox Music, Stitcher, and wherever else podcasts are heard. As always, we thank you so much for listening. We thank our sponsor at swappa.com/pocketnow, and we'll be back with more mobile tech talk next week. Thank you, Jules. Jules can be found at Greenpoint0 as well on Twitter. I forgot to mention it, but it's important. You should follow him because he makes Pocket Now's life better.